Hello, everyone. My name is Patricia O'Leary. I am a grad student in the Heritage Studies and Public History program here at the University of Minnesota. I am working with the Bell Museum as an intern in online programming for the new exhibit, Climates of Inequality, Stories of Environmental Justice, a project of the Humanities Action Lab. So environmental justice addresses the disproportionate effects of environmental problems, including climate change, on marginalized communities. This effect can happen from a lack of zoning laws that allow refineries, landfills, or high pollutant industries to be built dangerously close to marginalized neighborhoods. Today, I am here with Jack Reuler, founder and artistic director of Mixed Blood Theater. Mixed Blood Theater is located in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood in Minneapolis near the University of Minnesota's West Bank campus. Along with putting on wonderful performances, Mixed Blood Theater works with the surrounding community to better understand what they can do to help. Mixed Blood Theater uses performances to tackle issues of inequality, accessibility, um, and just working to make their community a better place. So, with that, Jack, how are you?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Been too long since this morning. So, what was your intention when you founded Mixed Blood Theater?
I did not. I'm not somebody that came from the arts. I was really an activist. I planned to be a veterinarian. I was a zoology major in college, and I started Mixed Blood at 22. Really, to we were at a time in America where the racial politics was called the melting pot theory, where people were trying to create one whitewash, milk toast, common universal culture. And that wasn't what I believed in. I think that's not what a lot of people believed in, but it was sort of the prevailing thinking. And so I started Mixed Blood really as a summer project so that people would pay positive attention, not no attention to difference. And that difference originally manifests itself in race, culture, and language, and it's evolved to have much more under its umbrella over the years.
Yeah, and I think that what's really unique about Mixed Blood is the ability to adapt with new issues over time and new issues of racial equality and dealing with different types of people coming in to Minnesota. Now, with that adaptability, how has Mixed Blood Theater been doing during the pandemic? What have y'all been up to?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to be in a field whose signature is assembling people for a common shared experience when it's illegal to assemble people for a common shared experience. And so we really, and I completely credit some great people on Mixed Blood staff, took what are our assets, one of which was our location and our building. And Mixed Blood was used as a food shelter, as a COVID testing place, for flu shots, for voter registration, for census taking, and a number of other things. So that we took it personally when the entire entertainment industry was deemed not essential, and we really wanted to be essential.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And, you know, I remember walking in and seeing boxes and boxes of masks and things to give out for families. So I think that's really awesome how the theater has adapted to still be, as you say, essential. And in terms of, social issues, right? What has the theater done to combat social issues? And I know that's like a big
I
topic.
mean, that's really at the core of what it is we try to do. And we especially what we've learned during the pandemic is in exploring internally what does essential mean. Is we ask the question, how can we infuse the arts into social equations so that those social equations can no longer be solved without the arts, without theater? And so we really try to take issues, oftentimes cross-sector issues. So not just there's the shows we do at the theater, which really provoke important discussion and display, artistic virtuosity. But there's the work we do elsewhere where we are partnering and collaborating with organizations and public entities in the private and public sector to be part of the way, whether they're addressing racial equity, whether they're addressing housing insecurity, whether they're addressing culture climate change and culture shifts. That's really where we do our best work, is in those cross culture and cross sector relationships.
So, how does, you're talking about collaborating with all these different organizations, how does that work to create a deeper narrative, a more full story?
Yeah, I think that over the years we have produced a lot of plays, and they've been on important things, and we brought awareness to people. But now what we're doing is really having long-term relationships where we do a lot of listening and collaborate. And we, instead of saying, listen to the story we have to tell, we say we want to be part of your story. And so there's a lot of listening goes on. For example, big project coming up on housing insecurity. We do these workshops where artists and policymakers and service providers and people experiencing homelessness and developers and landlords are coming together using the arts to find out what are the voids in their conversation, what don't they know about each other, how can those voids be filled. And from that, you now have these policymakers and other people embracing that the arts are a way to beta test ideas. And then there will be a theater of the highest caliber theater produced, to which all these people will be invited. But these organizing sessions will happen before, during, and after the performance, so that it's not a one and done thing, that we actually become part of changing attitude, behavior, and policy.
And I think that's so important. One of the words I use is just listening and finding the voids in the stories. The most important question: who is sitting at the table and who isn't? Who is part of the discussion and who isn't? Really changes. Are we telling the story of what we think is going on with this group of people, or are we letting them tell their story and what they need? And that's a big part of environmental justice, is ethical collaboration and listening, not just going in and telling people what you want to do, but asking, what do you need us to do?
And we certainly have learned that in Cedar Riverside, which is not a very porous community, that the block on which we live has 5,000 people that come from 63 countries and speak 92 languages. It's mostly an East African immigrant, refugee, and Muslim community. And because we've been there for 45 years, we are not the outsider, even though only some of our staff is from that community. And that's what we've just learned, is how do we make listening our primary activity, and then what can we do to implement the needs and wants of others.
And this new project that you're working on, along with all the other things Mixed Blood is doing, how does housing insecurity tie into environmental justice, right? Why is that what comes up?
Well, I mean, the biggest, so Mixed Blood has been part of different social movements since its very beginning. And the biggest social movement in the world that's ever taken place is that around climate change. I mean, it's a global effort moving, for the most part, in one direction. And part of that becomes, there's going to be this climate immigration. And a lot of social philosophers believe that Minnesota is going to be one of those center points where climate immigrants resettle. And so if there's housing insecurity issues now, when other people have fled where they're from because of the climate, the housing insecurity issues, I mean, the root causes of people experiencing housing insecurity are many. Some of it is generational cycles of substance abuse and poverty and mental illness, and others of it is just capitalism and how capitalism affects and power imbalances, as you were talking about, affect all these things, which are completely affected by climate. So we don't see those as two different efforts. We see it that our work in climate change and our work in housing insecurity are joined at the hip.
Yeah, and that's so important to think about them, or as these issues interconnected, right? Because environmental justice, part of it is who is feeling disproportionately the effects of climate change. When we're in -0 degrees, who is still out in the streets? Who is in danger? When there are fires in California, Who can't go inside places during the pandemic because they're closed down and can't breathe clean air? Um, who is most vulnerable to these issues? And you're right, it's a lot of to do with housing insecurity. So I just think that's so important to see those as not separate issues, but as things that go together.
And even more so, I think even at this moment in time, in May of 2019, we did a show called Autonomy that was really about autonomous vehicles, climate change, and immigration. And in that show, we predicted, the playwright, I'll give credit, predicted that climate change was going to lead to a pandemic, which was going to lead to all sorts of other things. And within 7 months, that proved to be true. And so these things really are the pandemic, housing insecurity, and climate change are all one conversation and need to be had together.
And what's amazing is that this all one conversation is happening at a theater. Uh, and so it's just a reminder that it's not just in academia, it's not just scholars or a theater or organizations, that these are connected and that that communication needs to happen to really make change.
And if good theater really creates a call to action for the individual, all the better. And that's really what our aim is to do right now.
And speaking of a call to action, what advice do you have for people that want to do this kind of work uh, and don't know where to start?
Because it's all so multifaceted and interconnected, what part of it do you really want to make impact on? One of those interesting things that in this month right now is that Bill Gates came out with this full-scale war on climate change and trying to get agriculture and construction and immigration and all sorts of other things to work together uh, to reverse climate change issues. And I think we need to really look at where we want to put, because it also ties into the criminal justice system. I mean, there's so
Mm-hmm.
many things. So you really get to pick. If it's climate change you want to affect, you might actually want to go into work in healthcare. And what is the area in there that speaks to you most and who's going to be receptive? But we are all individual players in it, and we all can be part of the movement in any of a number of different areas. So one can pick that, and we at Mixed Blood can be a resource. The Bell Museum can be a resource, the University of Minnesota, so that if people say, I found my niche within this bigger movement, we can guide you to those people that you can work with toward a remedy that meets your taste.
Yeah, and it's also just taking that step to include yourself in it, right? Like the Bell Museum, this is their first exhibit that's talking about environmental justice. They're a natural history museum, so this is new to them as well. But it's also taking that step to say we want to have a new sort of dialogue to talk about what's going on right now. So that's super important, and it's just amazing that Mixed Blood Theater was able to start doing it so ahead of time. Um, and I have one last question for you.
Please.
What do you want to say for the people that maybe have never seen a show at Mixed Blood Theater? What do you want them to know about Mixed Blood Theater?
I think that one of those things we're proudest of is just we're an inviting, welcoming, affirming place for everybody, that anybody can come and see what it is we do. And it should be a theatrical destination for people with disabilities. It should be an artistic home for artists across the gender identity spectrum. It should be a place for immigrants and refugees to know they can come and see their stories being told on stage, that it really is. And I originally I took a little exception to someone said that we're kind of the Bernie Sanders of theater, but it is really, everybody needs to be tended in the right way, and the doors are open for everyone, and the work we do will make you think and act at the same time.
That is an amazing way to end this interview. And Thank you for that. And thank you, Jack, for taking the time to share, 45 years of like hard-earned wisdom with me that cannot be encapsulated in such a short time, but we can try. I have spent weeks looking through your materials, and I never cease to be impressed with how the theater adapts and finds more ways to become a welcoming and inclusive environment. When you see a problem, you take it on and bring a few laughs into it as well. So that takes a certain skill and charm. So for everyone watching, make sure to visit Mixed Blood Theater's website and their Facebook page because they're still up to so many things right now. And for the exhibit at the Bell Museum, Climates of Inequality, Stories of Environmental Justice, you can see it digitally through the Bell's website, or you can see it in person starting March 12th with an advanced reservation. So thank you again, Jack, and thank you to the Bell Museum for making this possible.